I want to thank everybody for being here today. If you are here for the Youth Vaping on Campus, you are in the right place. We will be going up until about 11:30 today. My name is Linnell Lujan. I'm a Senior Program Specialist here. I use she, her pronouns, and I will be your presenter today. The rest of our team is mostly here. We have Mark Hernandez, our program coordinator. He will be fielding all of your questions and comments in the chat. So please feel free to utilize the chat at any point during our presentation today, and Mark will be taking care of those questions. We have Derek Reed, who will be joining us later. He is a senior program specialist with our Tier 2 schools. We also have Kira McNeely, kind of our newest person, even though she's been here for about a year. She's our senior program activity specialist. She will deal with all things that have to do with student engagement, parent, caregiver, and community engagement, and then our wonderful division secretary, Jasmine Martinez. If you are new here, which I feel like we do have a lot of newcomers to today's presentation, just a little bit about our unit and our team. We are the Tobacco Use Prevention Education Unit here at the Los Angeles County Office of Education. And what we really do is we provide support to all 80 LEAs in the county. What that means is we help build capacity through training, presentations like this, and also just tailored support depending on what the school district needs. We also provide services such as tabling events, educational materials like pamphlets and posters that you can present in your nurse's office, your next back to school night. We also facilitate successful collaboration between different schools and different organizations that basically just do the work of tobacco use prevention in our schools. A little bit of housekeeping for today. If you did not notice, today's presentation is being recorded. So if for some reason you need to step away, you need to leave early, or maybe today's presentation is something that you'd like to share with a colleague, do not fret, we are recording it so that it can be watched later on. Closed captions are enabled if you need them, and all recordings, including this one, is available on our YouTube channel, so that you can always refer to past trainings. Once again, please utilize the chat box to comment, share, answer questions. We will have a couple of engagement pieces throughout the presentation, so please make sure to participate, engage, just to kind of get a feel of what is going on in our schools and how your role is kind of pertaining to that work. And we will be sending all of our resources, recording, information, as well as the slides to people who registered for today's presentation. So you will get all of this information by the end of the week. So let's get started. Our agenda looks like a lot of information, and we are really going to cover a lot of topics. However, please know that today will not go into too much depth into a lot of these topics. This is really kind of to kick off the new school year, to kind of cover like the surface of some of these topics. We will at the end let you know about upcoming trainings and presentations that will go into depth in some of these areas. For instance, prevention programs, intervention programs, and so forth. But we will be burning through a lot of topics, so please feel free to ask questions again in the chat if so needed. And just to get us started, we're going to take a look at some of your responses. So today's first question was, where is your school, school district, or charter when it comes to addressing youth vaping on campus? And it looks like an overwhelming of the respondents came to the developing stages, right? So some strategies or activities are in place, but not consistent or comprehensive. And this is usually when we get people who are emailing us or calling us or meeting us in person, this is usually where a lot of schools fall into place. And one of the great things about what our team does is we are able to meet schools and school districts where they are. So whether that means reinventing the wheel or taking some strategies that they already have and making them more robust, we work really hard to work with schools and school districts where they are and meet them at that point. And we will be covering some of these strategies and activities today. The next question was, what multi-tiered supports does your school currently have in place? And it looks like, oh, we have a tie. So all three tiers and tier 1 and tier 2. So prevention, intervention, and cessation, which is great, right? That means that our schools are doing all the different levels that our school and our students need. However, for those 9 and 11%, once again, our team is here to help with that. We will be going over some of the tiers today in prevention curricula, intervention programs that are available, and how the different types will fit your capacity. So thank you so much for participating in our poll. It really gives us an idea of where to go for the rest of the school year and what sort of presentations and trainings are going to be needed for the rest of the year. So thank you. So let's get started with our e-cigarettes 101, the basics of e-cigarettes and vape devices, what they are, what they look like, how they work. So e-cigarettes are a device that basically simulates the experience of smoking. There is a cartridge inside with a heater, and that vaporizes or heats up the liquid inside instead of burning it. There is no combustion. There's no fire. But the other thing is that there's no smoke. And while the common misconception is that these e-cigarettes create a vapor, a lot of people think that that vapor is mostly water. What it really is creating is a nicotine aerosol. So when you think of aerosol, think of bug spray, suntan or sun screen, air fresheners. It's that aerosol that comes out of a can that is being inhaled by the user. When we're talking about what is being burned or what is being heated, usually e-liquid or e-juice is what it sometimes is called, is made up of about 4 different ingredients. You have, of course, the nicotine, artificial flavors, which is what makes some of these devices so sought after, and then the propylene glycol and vegetable glycerin. And that makes up most of the ingredients. But we want to talk a little bit about nicotine salts. And nicotine salts have really changed the landscape of vaping. When vaping first started, it was very, very harsh. It was basically the user was inhaling these chemicals that were sort of like burning the esophagus. And so what vape developers found was that if they added a nicotine salt, that adding the nicotine salts adds this acid to the nicotine, which makes it less abrasive. It makes it easier to inhale. No more scratchy throats, burning. And this is also contributing to the ease of vaping that kind of attracts users, in our case, youth, right? So as I said, why add the acid, right? Nicotine is really basic. The purpose of adding acid is to change the pH balance. Nicotine is an alkaline or a basic, and it has a high pH. So the more e-juice that you added, the stronger and more unpleasant it was to inhale the aerosol. So essentially, it was chemically burning your throat. So by adding the acid, developers at Juul, they realized that they could change the pH balance that would lower it and make it less irritating and more pleasant to use, despite the fact that they were still adding more and more nicotine. And on that topic, we now need to talk a little bit about how much nicotine is in these devices that our students and our youth are using. Back in 2016, what was considered a high nicotine e-cigarette would have been 16 milligrams per milliliter or 1.6%. However, today, the standard is 5%. And you will probably see these on puff bars, on any other devices that the standard is usually the 5% or 50 milligrams to milliliters, right? Just a little fun fact, other countries, their limit is about 2%. And so the United States has a very, very high levels of nicotine in just our regular basic standard nicotine vape devices. And once again, the whole crux of our topic today, right, is students, young people. They are using these very, very high levels of nicotine vape devices. And once again, they're using it very easily because of the nicotine salts. To give you a little visual of that, this graph here from 2017 to 2022, it just goes to show that the 5%, the standard 5% is the industry standard. And this is really changing the landscape of vapes, right? Mostly, you are going to see vapes that are going to contain that high level of 5%. So let's look a little bit about the evolution of vape devices. It really started with Juul. Juul was kind of known as sort of that like Apple product of vaping or smoking. It was very small, very discreet, very compact. And you saw a lot of other pod vapes come about. Pod vapes meaning that they have these little cartridges that you can switch out. You can charge it through a USB. These pods that were filled with liquid, you could swap them out when they were empty. Then we moved on to the refillable because the pod system became too expensive. And there were also other crackdowns on the pods, which led to a lot of loopholes. Once these pods started to become well known, a lot of restrictions, a lot of laws came into play. And so one of the ways around it was these refillable types. Then we came to what we're probably mostly familiar with, our disposables. They restricted the flavor pods, again, through laws and policies. And so companies decided one way around that was to now create disposables. Of course, this creates another problem, right? Because they're not actually disposable. They're really harmful to our environment. You can't just throw them in the trash, though I'm sure most people do. And so we saw this evolution from pods to refillables to disposables. Today, this is what you probably are more familiar with. Today's disposables come in a lot of these shapes. They are colorful, still small, still discreet. But we are seeing that disposables are less expensive. They're more convenient. And again, they get around a lot of the loopholes that were created when Juul first started selling. Elf Bar, probably the most popular one, not just with among youth, but just users in general. And I would even go as far to say that it's probably the most popular within the nation. However, Elf Bar is not legally allowed to be sold or imported into the United States. So it's very interesting that it is not an importable product, but it is the most popular product in our country. So to put it into perspective, a lot of young people have trouble understanding that that one little vape device that they have in their pocket can equal multiple packs of cigarettes. This is how it also becomes very difficult for students when they want to try to stop or try to reduce because they don't really have an equivalent of how much they're using. So we know that a pack of cigarettes has 20 milligrams of nicotine, and there's 20 cigarettes in a pack, right? The Juul pod had the equivalent of about 41 cigarettes. Puff bars had the equivalent of about 50 cigarettes, and Soren pods had the equivalent of about 90 cigarettes. And while this is alarming, One of the things to note is that the images on your screen right now are pretty outdated. What we're really looking at now are things like the Flume Floats, the Elf Bar. Tide was a really popular brand in the last National Youth Tobacco Survey. But now we're looking at devices that have upwards to the equivalent of about hundreds of cigarettes. And so it's really easy for a user to take one of these devices, go through it in a couple of days and not really realize that they have smoked 500 cigarettes in 2 days or 650 cigarettes in a week. And so this is one of the perils, I guess, to the small discrete part. But once again, the fact that these are at 5% nicotine levels. So real quick, just some takeaways. When we're talking about e-cigarettes or vapes, they are meant to recreate the experience of smoking by heating up a liquid that releases an aerosol, not a vapor, and it carries nicotine into the lungs through that aerosol. Today's vapes, they use nicotine salt to deliver very, very high levels of nicotine, which is deceptively less harsh. Most common vapes are disposable now, and they still hold very, very large amounts of nicotine liquid, which can go undetected by young people because they don't really understand or know how much of the equivalent is in that one vape device. I put disposables here in quotes once again because they are not technically safe to dispose of. They are considered e-waste, plastic waste, and hazardous waste, especially when a user is breathing, like putting it to their mouth and inhaling it. And so they're disposable, but they're not really biodegradable or safe for the environment. One thing to talk about very briefly are smokeless tobacco products like pouches, nicotine pouches. Pouches are starting to enter the conversation. And even though they're not super prominent, the questions, these questions are still starting to become prevalent on surveys like the National Youth Tobacco Survey or the California Youth Tobacco Survey. And it's because we are seeing a small increase in these. Some of the versions you'll see snuff, chew, or dip. These are very, very popular with like baseball players. You probably, if any of my 80s kids, fellow 80s kids out there, remember the bubblegum chew. It's kind of trying to simulate that. You also have snus, which has like the tobacco leaf in a little pouch. Both of these use the tobacco leaf, but what we're seeing become more prominent are the nicotine pouches. And these do not have the nicotine leaf in it. It actually has nicotine powder. And what you do with these is you put them in sort of like between your lips and your teeth or your gums. It can go undetected. Somebody can carry on their whole day, have a whole conversation without anybody knowing. And one of the questions that we get a lot, or something that you might be wondering, is, are young people actually using these? To give you a sense of how common these are, this is from the California Youth Tobacco Survey, which I'm going to be referencing a lot today. And this shows the percentage among high school students. You have those who have ever tried nicotine pouches at 2.4% in 2022, and then 3.1% in 2023, which is the most recent results from the California Tobacco Use Survey. Current users went from 0.6 to 1.1. Now, these levels are very low, and even the increase is very, very low, and it doesn't sound like much, but you can see that statistically there is an increase, which is significant despite being low. And it is a cause for concern. To give you another sense of that, here is, again, from the California Youth Tobacco Survey, and all the different products that students have said that they are currently using. And as you can see here, that Vapes obviously are number one at 5.9. Cigarettes, 1.2, and nicotine pouches, 1.1. And so this is a cause for concern when you put it up against other tobacco products. Vapes are number one, but second is cigarettes, and nicotine pouches are not that far behind. This kind of gives us an indication that there is an upward trend of nicotine pouches, and maybe it's not moving quickly, but the increase is something to keep an eye on. It's something we need to note and be aware of, because we don't want to be caught unaware or uninformed about these issues like we were when Juul came out in 2018. We tried to scramble very quickly to address youth vaping because vapes just kind of came out of nowhere. So with nicotine pouches and youth usage, we need to just really keep an eye on it. Another thing to look at or keep an eye on is the triangulum. And this is really the framework for understanding how youth are harmed by the collective impact of tobacco, vaping, and marijuana. Here, the TUPE unit, when we talk about vaping, we really are encompassing everything, whether that means vaping nicotine, vaping marijuana. There's even vape devices that have like essential oils in them, caffeine. Any type of vaping is what we address. But vaping does cross over very easily from nicotine into the cannabis marijuana realm. And so we can see here that some very, very common vape devices that are exclusively towards marijuana or cannabis usage. The brand Stizzy creates or makes vape devices that are cannabis use. And then cartridges, which have a thicker, more stickier like wax inside of them, are usually used for cannabis use as well. A lot of young people are reporting right now that they are doing co-usage between cannabis and nicotine and tobacco. Some of vape devices today are interchangeable. So you can, if you have pods or cartridges, you can change them out for nicotine and cannabis e-juice. And some of them, again, like Stizzy, are exclusively just cannabis. And so students or young people might have cannabis vapes and then nicotine vapes that they're using at the same time. So what is cannabis, right? So cannabis is made up of these cannabinoidal, I always have a problem saying that, but the one thing to really notice is that CBD is not the psychoactive part of it, it's the THC. So when we're looking at our vape devices, we're really looking for the THC levels and how much is really concentrated inside of those devices. This is a map of receptors, concentrations within the body, because THC and CBD are cannabinoids that attach to the nerve cells throughout the body and the brain. And these receptors in our body are affected by these cannabinoids. It's really a lot of things like memory, sleep, appetite, any of these different receptors, your heart, your stomach, even like eye movement. And this can explain why people's reaction to cannabis can be so different. It's why it's such a complex drug, which means that it's a really complex topic to talk about with our young people. It's a very nuanced discussion, and it's why we cannot make absolute statements about how cannabis affects the body or what a person can expect when using cannabis, because it's different for everyone. And so while it is a sticky conversation to have with young people, it's also good to note that for young people, we don't know how each individual is going to be affected by this cannabis, the THC and the CBD. So there are different ways to use cannabis. Of course, vaping or aerosoling is one way. This can take up to 5 to 10 seconds to feel the effects. That can last for about 30 to several hours. But we also see some in the more traditional smoking pipes and bongs. This can include things like joints, blunts, spliffs, pipes, bongs. This is really the use of like the actual plant or the flower of the cannabis. Once again, it can only take 5 to 10 seconds to feel the effects. It can last 30 to several hours, depending on the person. The THC concentration really depends on the cannabis. Whereas when vaping, the THC concentration depends on the liquid. There are some that are all the way up to 98% concentration, and there are some that are less. Dabbing is another way. You will probably see this less often than vaping just because the devices are a little bit bulkier, they're heavier, they're often made out of things like glass that could break, whereas vaping is a little bit more discreet. But again, 5 to 10 seconds to feel the effects. It can last 30 minutes to several hours. Dabbing usually has a very, very high THC concentration because instead of heating up juice, it's actually heating up a very thick wax because it is so concentrated. But one of the things that we are most concerned with, especially in schools, is edibles. Edibles are basically anything that you can ingest or eat can be laced with cannabis. One of the things about this, though, is that one, it is very easy to mistake an edible with something harmless. As you can see in the image here, a lot of those at first glance look like harmless snacks. But if you look closely, you can see the little minute differences that tell us that these are cannabis infused. Even worse is when you have homemade goods that have cannabis in them. I was a teacher for 10 years. I have definitely had students who came home with or came to school with mom's special brownies, both unknowingly and knowingly, right? And so it's really hard to be able to tell. And it's really hard for the user to be able to tell how much they're taking and when to stop. Unlike the others, it can take 20 minutes to 2 hours to feel the effects. And what you see most often happen is the user will keep ingesting and ingesting and ingesting, thinking that the cannabis is not working, they didn't take enough. And before they know it, they've ingested more than they should have. A couple hours have passed, and now they're feeling the effects. Edibles can be very dangerous because they can be very strong without knowing it. It's very common for people to take too much because of the delayed effect. And due to the digestion of the user, they don't feel those effects immediately. So then they take more. And what can happen is what is called greening out. And these are really, really bad side effects that can cause constant vomiting, hallucinations. And we're actually seeing a lot of young people being taken to the ER more often because of this. So when we're talking about vape devices in the cannabis realm, you have still pod vapes. Again, same concept of the pods that can be interchanged. Stizzy is a very, very popular company that specializes in vape pods for cannabis. You have the vape pens or cartridges that have little cartridges that can be interchanged. You can charge these through a USB charger. And then, of course, you have all-in-one disposables. Some of the most popular ones are Fried, Dime, Blinker. So as you can see, it follows the same process as our nicotine vapes, right? We have our pods, our carts, our disposables. But just like our nicotine vapes, cannabis vapes are also increasing in the amount of cannabis that they are putting into these vapes. If you looked at a average cannabis bud in 2003, it probably only contained about 7% concentrate of the THC. Remember, that's the psychoactive part of the cannabis plant. 10 years later, average cannabis bud increased to 12%. Not a big jump, but an increase over those 10 years. Nowadays, 2023, your cannabis vapes like Stizzy, Skywalker, all of those type have upwards of 93% cannabis THC in them. That is a huge jump between 2013 and 2023. And once again, students and young people aren't really knowing that this is such a big increase. They don't know that 93% concentrate is in that cannabis. They're not really looking for those things. All they know is that that's what's available, and that's what they're using. To put it a little bit into perspective of the history of how these cannabis and THC has increased in concentration, we're going to watch a quick video of Ralph Cantor. He's presenting to a group of high school students at Stanford University in 2018. So kind of keep that in mind that it's in 2018, but we're still kind of a few years away from what he's presenting in this video.
Got high. Believe me, hippies in the 60s got high. I was there, okay? That weed had this tetrahydrocannabinol in it, and it had 1 to 3% THC. And it's very important to understand this drug worked fine. People got high in the 60s, no problem. They all got the munchies and everything that you talk about. This drug worked, okay? Next thing that happened in the late 60s was the Vietnam War. And a lot of people went to Vietnam, including me. And the weed in Vietnam was totally different. It was a totally different experience. And the reason was, it was 5 to 10% THC. Now, in order to understand the numbers on this, let's say this was 2% and this is 8%. This weed was 4 times stronger than this weed. And the reason was, it was a different strain. It was all cannabis, but the cannabis in the States was cannabis sativa, where the cannabis in Vietnam was cannabis indica. And so this is a much stronger strain. So what some of the soldiers said was, hey, listen, if we ever brought this back to the States, people go crazy for the stuff back in the States. Those people took those indica seeds and said, listen, let's not leave California. Let's just go up north to Humboldt County and Mendocino County. And they just got trees up there. We'll plant these indica seeds and start ourselves a little marijuana business. Boy, did they ever. So they started to grow just female indica plants, and that bumped it up to 10 to 15% THC. And you guys weren't born yet. Now we got to fast forward about 25 years while they are up there cloning and hybrids and fertilizing and everything else, so that the common weed in our little Northern California is between 15 and 20% THC. Compare that to what hippies were getting high on here. This is a whole other ball game of drug here. And wax is right around 50% THC. And I don't want to go through all of the ones here, but I'll tell you the last one that you end up with is a dab. And a dab is 95% THC. This is the level of where you guys are coming in to this thing here right now. And not only are you coming in on this level, but you're also coming in a teenage time. This is a whole other ball game of what it does.
So as you can see, when students have a lot of misconceptions about cannabis, which we will go over a little bit later, students think cannabis is a plant. It should be safe. Cannabis was used by my grandparents, by my parents, and what they don't really realize is their parents are adults, but also that cannabis is different than it was even 10 years ago. So the idea that students are using the same type of cannabis that hippies in the 60s used, just as Ralph Cantor is talking about, it's not. It's not the same. And what we're seeing young people use today is upwards of 98% concentration THC, which is where you see that greening out and a lot of ER visits among young people using cannabis. So just some quick takeaways about cannabis products. We know that cannabis products deliver the cannabinoids like THC and CBD, which affect many body functions. The delayed effects of edibles often lead to excessive consumption, which can lead to greening out. And both cannabis vapes and edibles can deliver extremely high doses of THC, which can be very dangerous. So that brings us to youth vaping. We've talked about vaping, what it looks like, how students are using it, but what do the statistics actually say? We are going to go over lots of different levels of statistics, but the first one we're going to look at is national. The NYTS does this self-reporting survey every single year. The newest results come out in October. So in October, we will see the 2025 results. But in 2024, the NYTS showed that there was a decrease in use of e-cigarettes, which is great, right? It says that we are doing our job. We are doing well in helping young people either resist using or stop using. However, the decrease was only due to high school students. Middle school students did not change in their usage. And while the NYTS does not question elementary aged kids, my assumption would be that there is an increase in usage in elementary schools. So where we used to have really, really high levels in high school, I feel like tobacco use prevention was really, really focused on high school students. We've done our job and seen those numbers decrease, but we now need to focus on middle school and elementary school. According to the National Youth Tobacco Survey, it has been reported that some of the most popular brands were brands like Elf Bar, Breeze, Mr. Fogg, Voos, and Juul. But as I said before, Elf Bars are not legally allowed to be imported into the United States. So once again, it's very interesting as to how Elf Bar is one of the most popular brands among youth. And it is outlawed basically in our country. Narrowing that down a little bit more, the California Youth Tobacco Survey, which is conducted every other year, is what we will probably be hearing a lot of statistics from in this presentation, because California is an outlier. California, compared to the rest of the states, really has high numbers of success when it comes to youth and tobacco use prevention. So I like to get a lot of our statistics and data from California because they don't really mirror that of the nation. And it's very important for us to know how we are doing here in California with our policies, our laws. And so when it came to the 2023, which once again is the most recent report that has been available, 12th graders said that they are current users at 7.6% and 14% marijuana or cannabis. 10th graders, 4.3% vapes and 7.2% marijuana. And 8th graders who are currently using vape devices came in at 2.5% and 3.1% of marijuana. Couple things to notice here. We are noticing that students are using more of cannabis and marijuana than they are of vapes. Vapes can include nicotine and cannabis, and it could include co-usage, but we are seeing an increase in marijuana usage. However, some good news is that about half of those who reported that they are currently using have reported 40.8% have reported that they are attempting to quit in the last 12 months. And almost the same amount, 38.8% have reported that they intend to try to quit vaping in the next 30 days. So once again, some good news there that those who are current users, which we can argue might be addicted because they are currently using, which means that they use most often in a span of 30 days, that they are intending to quit or trying to quit. But one of the questions that I think a lot of people ask is, why are students using these devices and using these substances? And again, the CYTS in 2023 reported that 35.2% said that they use because they feel anxious, they feel stressed, they feel depressed. They are using to self-medicate in some way. 20.6% said that they use it to get high or to feel a buzz from the nicotine. 9.8% said that they use it because friends use it, whether that means peer pressure or just the ease and accessibility of it. 4.7% said that they use it to focus or concentrate. So again, students are using it to maybe for a fix, right? Gone are the days, I think, of the assumption that those who are smoking or vaping, that they're just, they're the troublemakers, the bad kids. And what we see a lot is that it's not necessarily that stereotype, right? It could be the really studious student who has a lot of pressure on them and they did not do well on a test and they're feeling anxious and stressed and they do not know how to find healthy coping mechanisms. So these are some of the reasons why current users are experiencing or saying that they are using these devices to somehow fix something or help them focus. One question that we get a lot is, where are students getting these? They are illegal for youth, right? A lot of people think, yeah, they must be getting it from friends and family. And that is true, right? You can get it from an older neighbor, an older cousin, sometimes unsuspecting house members like a parent, an older sibling, a grandparent, even classmates. We have worked with schools where the middle school and the high school are very, very close to each other. And it's the high schoolers that are selling it to the middle schoolers because the high schoolers are older and they're able to get it easier. Social media is another way. We all know that social media apps like TikTok and Instagram work off of algorithms, which means that it shows the user content based on their interest and their age. And if a seller is trying to target young people, the algorithm will choose who to show that to. It will also allow sellers to arrange selling points with young people through direct messaging or DMs. This can also be very dangerous as well. We don't want our young people meeting strangers in parks or parking lots to buy a vape device off of somebody that they met on Instagram. Online stores also sell. If you've ever been on an online vape shop website, you know that all you have to do is click the little button that says, yes, I'm over the age that is allowed. And that's it. You don't have to prove it. You don't have to scan your ID card. All you have to say is, yes, I am an adult. And you can purchase these items online. You can even purchase them from out of state. Some of our students have family members who work and students can get to their house and their mail sooner than the adults in the household. They have older siblings, they have friends who have access to their mail more than their parents do and can have anything shipped to them. But one surprising way is students are getting them the way that everybody gets them, going to the store and buying them. In a poll that was taken, I think it was in 2022, it asked a group of 13 to 18-year-old young people who were current users, where did they buy their devices? And 40% of them said that they were getting them from smoke shops or gas stations, which tells us that the smoke shops or gas stations are either not verifying age, or they're going through the motions of verifying the age, but not really holding the buyer accountable to that age limit. To give you a little bit more insight, the California Youth Tobacco Survey asked students here in California their methods of accessing vape devices. This has been broken down between 12th graders, 10th graders, and then overall. We have those who say that someone bought it for them, someone gives it to them, they asked somebody for it, they took it from somebody, or they get them some other way. It's very interesting to see that the biggest jump or the biggest respondent was that they buy it for themselves. Most young people are saying they are able to buy it for themselves. And to give you a little bit more insight into that, here are all the ways they say that they buy them. They buy them from someone else. They buy it from a tobacco shop or a smoke shop. They buy them from vape shops, from gas stations or convenience stores, or some other way. Grocery stores, liquor stores, or on the internet. So this is really, really interesting to see, one, that they are getting them from the places that are supposed to be restricting them, from places that are supposed to be verifying their age. It's also interesting to see 12th grade versus 10th grade. It is no wonder that those in 10th grade are saying that they're getting them from someone else, because they're younger, right? They might be getting them from 10th graders, an older sibling, an older friend, an older neighbor. But once again, it also goes to show that these shops are selling them to our youth. We have worked with many school districts and many schools where admin and TUPE coordinators have told us the kids know. They know exactly which liquor store and which vape shop to go to and when. They know which worker will sell it to them and which ones won't. And then they share that information with their classmates. If you ever want to know which vape shop and what's the name of the clerk who is selling these to students, the students will know. And that brings me to who's really being targeted here. This was sent to us by a school admin that they saw, I think it was on Instagram. And you can't see it, but it says, who knew Mercedes-Benz car key vapes existed? Once again, if you are a legal adult buying these devices, why would you need to hide it and be discreet? Also, if you are an adult legally buying these, why do they have to look like toys? Right? Who's being targeted in this case? Well, these are not very common. These are items that exist. These images were actually taken directly from FDA newsletters alerting people that these devices are out on the market and are currently being pulled as they are being found. But you can see here how a lot of these can be attractive to young people. And as I said earlier, my assumption would be that we're seeing a rise in usage in elementary schools, even though surveys don't currently survey elementary school students. But when I see images like this looks more like elementary, right? I was a high school teacher. Some of these might be cool, maybe kind of ironic for some of my 11th and 12th grade students, but I can definitely see my 7th grade and 4th grade niece and nephew looking at these and thinking, those are kind of cool. They look fun, not really realizing that they're not toys, they're vape devices. Another thing that we're seeing, which once again, they are not as common, but we are seeing them in existence, are digital devices. So this move towards digital platforms and digital surfaces, they're kind of cool. They're like the iPhones of vape devices. Our program coordinator even showed me the other day a vape device that was a phone case. So you have your phone, and it also has a vape um, heater inside of the case. These are just things to kind of keep an eye on, but also while they're not super common, it still gives us an idea of where the industry is trying to target and how they are endlessly trying to hook young people with these devices. With that said, I am so proud and happy to report that most youth who are currently using tobacco products are not daily users. And most youth in California and LA County haven't even tried, right? Our numbers are very low here in California, and we want to keep those numbers low, even keep them going further down, right? But the big picture here is that most youth are not using it. And that's a common misconception for students because sometimes when you're feeling peer pressure, students feel everybody's doing it. And what they don't realize is not everybody's doing it. So this brings us to health concerns. What is it exactly are we looking at in terms of health concerns for young people? But mostly, what do young people not know about the health concerns that might actually make them want to stop or not even try? Before we get there, though, I want to begin by saying that I think it's really important to frame our discussion properly. When we are speaking to young people, it's important to recognize the context of students' lives. As we saw earlier, students are turning to vapes as a form of self-medicating in order to deal with what they're going through in their lives. And they all have different things going on in their lives, right? We need to stay focused on our goal. We need to enable youth to make healthy decisions based on factual and accurate information. This isn't about wrong or right or morality or are you a good person or a bad person. This is more just about healthy decisions um, and not about the adults and what they do in their lives. We need to make sure that we're not accidentally alienating students and their families because they may have family members who use these products and or who are working in the industry. They might own a vape shop or a dispensary. They might work at a convenience store or a gas station. And we don't want to unintentionally shame students because of that. So in order to do that, we need to differentiate between the industry and the industry. There is a big difference between people who are just trying to make a living and the difference between that and large companies and manufacturers who are weaponizing these products to create addiction and to target young people for profit. So we always want to focus on youth and helping them make healthy decisions. So with that said, when it comes to some of the health risks, our biggest priority is the brain. We know that young people's brains are constantly developing. They are unable to make the best decisions because their brains are developing up until the age of 25. And while their brains are trying to grow and properly work, when we throw nicotine and THC into that, it can affect their learning, their attention, their memory, their decision-making skills, their executive skills. And we know through research, tons and tons of research, that tell us that these substances are highly addictive to teen brains as their brains are developing. Teens have more of a probability of becoming addicted than a fully formed adult brain. And they're even more at risk of becoming addictive when teen brains are experiencing times of stress, which, once again, as we know, students are turning to these devices and to these substances to quote unquote help their stress. And we know that it actually just makes their stress worse. This, once again, from the California Youth Tobacco Survey, shows that stress relief is the most commonly reported reason for vaping among high school students who are currently vaping. But a survey was done through West Ed, And it showed that among 7th, 9th, and 11th grade students, those who had reported having high levels of chronic sadness, suicide ideation, emotional distress, they were more likely to turn to vapes. When I say chronic sadness, I don't mean someone who is feeling sad because they went through a breakup or someone who's upset because they failed their math test. I'm talking about deep depression, sadness for more than 30 days. However, on the flip side, those students who reported having life satisfaction and being very optimistic, they were less likely to turn to vaping. So once again, just another indication that students are using these devices and these substances to help with all of these different social emotional things that are going on in their life, that they are turning to cheap and quick fixes rather than knowing coping skills, healthy coping skills, and healthier options. These numbers do not change very much when it comes to marijuana. Once again, chronic sadness, suicide ideation, emotional distress showed that most who experienced those were vape users. Those who experienced life satisfaction and optimism were less likely to vape. So, aside from that, what are some other reasons young people take these health risks? Personal factors we went through. They are experiencing depression, isolation. They are trying to somehow fix something that's going on inside them. Interpersonal can still be those factors between people. So, peer pressure, maybe having access to them at parties, friends, trying to be cool, sort of those belonging aspects. And then one that's not really talked about a lot are social and environment. These are factors within a local community and beyond. So this can mean how many vape shops does that student pass on their way to school and then from school? How many billboards for a dispensary are they seeing when they are leaving their house to go to grandma's house? How many advertisements on Instagram and TikTok and whatever else are they being shown of people smoking and vaping? How many times are they seeing it in movies and music videos? Does their community lack policies and bans of vaping in public spaces or multi-housing units? A lot of times young people don't have the knowledge or the information that they need to make healthy choices. And so when they're being bombarded with all of these things in their environment, it's almost like subliminal messaging because they're not really noticing it, but they see it and they encounter it. A lot of students that I work with have common misconceptions about cannabis, nicotine, and vaping. Some of those are they think that vaping is healthier than cigarettes. They think it's just water in the vapes. And what they don't realize is that while e-juice does have those 4 ingredients that we covered earlier, vegetable glycerin, propylene glycol, nicotine, and artificial flavors, what they don't realize is that that is what the ingredients are prior to a chemical reaction. Once you have the chemical reaction of heating all of those ingredients up, it changes it from a liquid to an aerosol. And in that aerosol are all of these different chemicals that the user is inhaling. Within those chemicals, the ones that are highlighted are thought to be those that can cause cancer. Students may not realize that when they are vaping, they are inhaling things like formaldehyde, lead, arsenic, nickel, things that can be found in nail paint, nail paint remover, fireworks, gasoline. And sometimes when students see this, they're kind of blown away. This does not look healthy. This doesn't look like water, right? And so one of the other concerns when it comes to their health is counterfeit products. We know that all those chemicals that we just looked at are in the vape devices that are being sold. What we don't know is what is being put into the counterfeit devices that are being sold from other countries. Here is a picture of the Puff Bar in Mango, which is a legitimate vape device. The following three are counterfeits made to look like the Puff Bar. The Cloud, the Uno, and the, what is that, Black Unicorn, they are not allowed to be sold in the United States. These are counterfeits that come from other countries. We don't know what e-juice is inside of them. We don't know if the battery is going to explode. We don't know what it's laced with. These are some of the concerns when students are trying to buy these illegitimately online. And these companies do a really good job. This one is a picture of an elf bar, but it actually isn't. This is a counterfeit. This is the actual elf bar. The only difference you see here is the name of the flavor. Everything else looks exactly the same. So some key takeaways here. Nicotine and THC are more addictive to the teen brain, especially when they are stressed. Both can affect learning, memory, attention, and it can even worsen their depression. Vaping generates harmful chemicals and metals, and vaping and nicotine affect the heart and blood vessels. So how do we address this on our campuses? That is where we're going to turn to Ed Code. We're going to start off with a quick scenario of a student named Jordan. During this scenario, what I want you all to do is open up your chat box. While we are listening to Jordan's story, I want you to drop an S into the chat at the point you think Jordan's actions require suspension. I also want you to drop an E into the chat at the point in the story where you think Jordan's actions require an expulsion, right? So listen to the story. When you think it's time to suspend Jordan, go ahead and drop an S. When you think it's time to expel Jordan, go ahead and type in an E. All right, here we go.
Jordan is a 10th grader at California High School who, like many students, is trying to find his place on campus. He's well liked by some peers, but also drawn to older students who were experimenting with vaping and other substances. Up until this point, Jordan has not had any behavior infractions on his record. One afternoon, a teacher doing a routine restroom check found Jordan in a stall, exhaling clouds of vapor from a nicotine vape pen. The teacher confiscated the device and escorted him to the office. Jordan admitted he had purchased the vape online and had been using it for a few weeks. 2 weeks later, during lunch, campus security noticed Jordan and two friends standing behind the gym. When approached, Jordan was found using a cannabis vape cartridge. He tried to hide it, but when questioned, Jordan admitted it was a cannabis vape. Later in the semester, Jordan's behavior escalated. During a basketball game, staff saw him pass his vape pen to another student in the bleachers. The student inhaled and handed it back. When questioned, Jordan admitted it was his cannabis vape. Despite warnings and disciplinary action, Jordan returned to school on a behavioral contract. However, only a few weeks later, staff received a tip that he was selling vape cartridges from his backpack. An assistant principal caught him in the act of exchanging cartridges for cash.
All right, I see all those E's coming in at the end. Yeah, so one of the questions that we get a lot, or some of the things that we run into, is what does ed code say? And as you may have experienced, which I have experienced, ed code is very, very vague, right? And it doesn't just lay things out in black and white. And so sometimes we do get questions of like, do we not? Is this suspension? So let's go over Jordan's story. Jordan has never been caught before. He's had no infractions, but he gets caught this one time. What Ed Code says is he shouldn't be suspended. According to state guidance, a student should not be suspended for their first offense involving tobacco or nicotine. Instead, other means of correction, such as counseling, restorative conversation, a parent contact, all can be used instead. Next, 2 weeks later, we see that Jordan has been caught again. And this one says that suspension may be applied. For a first incident of cannabis use, suspension may be applied. Expulsion is not automatic here unless the amount is larger or over 1 ounce. But then later on, Jordan, once again, his behavior escalates, right? At a ball game, he's passing his vape to somebody else. Admin sees him using it or the other student using it. This is an instance where Jordan must be suspended or recommended for expulsion, right? Under Ed Code, a student who furnishes a controlled substance must be suspended or recommended for expulsion. And finally, the tried and true one, he is selling at school. This is an automatic expulsion, right? In this case, the law is very, very clear. The student must be expelled. The district governing board is required to expel this student because they're selling a controlled substance, which includes cannabis. So
Jordan is a 10th grader.
So we see that Ed Code says a lot of different things about tobacco and cannabis. Obviously, these are two different substances. We saw with Jordan, his first usage with nicotine was, an alternative to suspension. But once he starts dabbling in cannabis, these things change in Ed Code. We start off with a super broad discretion. Ed Code will always try to suggest alternatives to other means of correction if not feasible. As Jordan escalated, it turned into, the admin or the principal having limited discretion. And then you have one of your big five, the mandatory expulsion, right? To help, we have available a guidance sheet that goes over some of these very basic, easy instances when it comes to tobacco, cannabis, alcohol, and opiates. Mark will drop that link into our chat right now. But of course, it will be linked when you get these slides emailed to you. It is a quick guidance with some explanation with Ed Code language in there to give you an idea of when a student should and should not be suspended or expelled. We always want to try to lean towards other means of corrections. While this is not a complete list, these are some ideas. But the main thing is on our school campuses, how can we tell? Right? Gone are the days where we can smell something burning or see a smoke cloud above, the locker rooms. And this image here is meant to show how it's very hard to tell. Among these supplies are vape devices that look like pens or highlighters. So what we really need to do is focus on the after effects. There's not going to be an identifying odor. And if there is, it's going to smell sweet like candy or perfume. So we need to keep an eye out for finding unusual parts or pieces left in the classroom, student behavior like long trips to the bathroom, change in behavior or mood, drowsiness, bloodshot eyes. Can these be attributed to something that's not vaping? Absolutely. Maybe that student is going through some issues at home and is unable to sleep, and that's why their eyes are bloodshot. But this is where you have to work with your SROs, with your families and caregivers, and your students, right? Check in with your students. We give this advice to parents as well. Check in with your students, talk to them. They might be experiencing stress and it's not vaping, or they are experiencing stress and their bloodshot eyes are due to vaping. The point here is that we really need to attack this in a different way than we did back in the day when students were smoking. And one way to do that is to use our existing structures and systems, using policies, procedures, different programs, and inputting them into our MTSS, our PBIS, really looking at the California health standards where these substance use is talked about, and really using the whole child, right? So bringing the student in, bringing the parents and caregivers in, and trying to address the reasons why they are using these vape devices. That brings us to our tiered programs. Now, once again, I'm going to go over these really quickly. We are almost done, but please know that we do give trainings on these tiered programs in depth. So first, we're going to look at prevention. We suggest 3 different prevention curricula that are available to schools and school sites for free. Catch My Breath is one of them. And then the other 2, You and Me Vape Free and Smart Talk, come out of the Stanford Reach Lab. All of these are standards aligned. They come in PowerPoint, Canva, and Google Slide format. They come with other supporting materials like parent letter templates, engagement pieces like Kahoots and worksheets, and they are constantly updated to reflect new information and data. Intervention for those who may have gotten caught more than once, for those who just need to address their usage that might be verging on addiction. When considering these programs, you really need to look at what your school is capable of, what your progressive discipline matrix looks like, and the process that you currently have when it comes to referrals and participation and completion. The 3 we suggest: brief intervention, healthy futures, and why vape. These come in different types. You can either have a staff be trained and lead it, or you can partner with a company, an organization like Why Vape, if you don't have the capacity to train staff to carry on this work. Finally, when it comes to cessation, this is really when students are just addicted, they have been caught many times, and they really need to seek some outside help. Kick It California is also part of Why Vape. They work with youth for free tobacco cessation services. They do one-on-one counseling. These services are available in multiple languages. And they also have a section that is specifically just for teens and youth. They do have services for adults, but they keep those 2 things separate because 2 different audiences. Teen Smoke Free is another one that utilizes text messaging, because we know that our students today are very, very used to text messaging. And they also feel a little bit more comfortable when it's anonymous. LA Quits is another one that does utilize text messaging and is geared towards tobacco control and prevention programs for youth. So here's my favorite part, is what we have to offer you when it comes to resources. If you are interested in prevention curricula that I just went over, we are giving a training on September 9th to go into depth in those 3 different curriculas, what they do, how to use them, how they work, how to access them. So if you are not signed up for that, please feel free to go and register for it. It is free. They are recorded as well. So if you register and you weren't able to make it, you will get a recording for it, or you can always check our YouTube. We also have a training coming up on the intervention programs. So this will go over why vape, healthy futures, and brief intervention, and some of the trainings that come along with that, and how to choose which one is best for your school site or your district. We have a lot of other trainings that would take way too long to go over right now, but this is a link to our catalog where we have upcoming trainings available. Go ahead and bookmark that or star it. We are constantly updating it once we schedule new trainings, or when we have guests come and host a training for us. Everything that comes out of our unit is free. So keep an eye on that. It is most of our stuff is live and PDs that are virtual, but we do have a couple of asynchronous trainings there as well. We also offer signage to schools, metal signage that says that you are a tobacco-free campus. We offer educational materials where you can order pamphlets, posters, things to promote healthy decisions and healthy coping mechanisms and skills for students at your next health fair or your next back to school night. We also offer staff training, technical assistance, and now we offer caregiver and community presentations by presenting at PTAs or back to school nights. Anything that you can need, once again, we meet you where you are and try to support what it is that you need. One really exciting thing that I'm going to mention that is our last thing is we have a new resource that we are offering out of our office, vape device confiscation bins, available to LA County schools, LEAs, public LEAs. We got a grant to offer these to schools because we noticed that schools don't really have a process or a set way to confiscate, store, and then dispose of vape devices that they are confiscating from students. And so we are offering these to school districts while supplies last. In these bins come stickers that say hazardous waste. There is a confiscated vape device bin label. Gloves, it will come with envelopes where you can put information on it about who it was confiscated from, when, where, what type of device it was, and then a one-pager on how to properly and safely handle these devices and dispose of them. As I said, these are available exclusively to public LEAs in Los Angeles County. One catch is that your school district be a certified tobacco-free school and serving grade 6 and up. So if you think that you are a school district that is certified tobacco-free school district, let us know, put in an order. We will send you off your bins. Each school district can request up to 4 bins. If you are not a certified tobacco-free school district, contact us. We will walk you through the process. We have templates that you can use in order to go through that process. We will send you your metal signs that say your campus is a certified tobacco-free school, and we will send you your bins. In them shows you how to safely handle, how to safely store, what goes in these bins, and how to properly document them. And another thing this does is we have an optional survey that is attached to the bins that admin and school districts can use. Each one has a label with instructions on how to complete the survey. But what the survey really does is it helps our unit gather information. It tells us the most common products that are being confiscated and found in LA County schools. It tells us how frequently vapes are being confiscated. It will tell us the age group. It is all anonymous. You don't have to tell us what school you're from. You don't have to tell us what student it's from. We just want to know what these devices look like, where, what brands they are, and how often they're being confiscated. If you are interested in putting in an order, this is the order form to do that. If you are interested in becoming a certified tobacco-free school district in order to be eligible for these bins, you can go ahead and email us at tupe@lacoe.edu, which Mark is going to drop into the chat. But with that said, I know that that was a lot of information. And like I said, it was a lot of very surface information. I hope that you visit us for all of our other trainings that go into depth in a lot of those topics that we burned through today. But I want to thank you all for being here, for listening to me for 90 minutes. I would appreciate it if you could take time to take our survey. This really helps us understand the types of trainings you are looking for or in need of, and just how our trainings are, if they need to be improved in terms of more information on a certain topic or better data. This tells us and informs us how to better serve you with the information that you need. With that said, I want to thank you all for being here. We will stick around to answer questions. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week and have a great day.